Man, oh man. I just got done watching this LaDanian Tomlinson Hall of Fame speech. And let me tell you something right now. This NFL boycott that we supposedly are trying to do is going to be an epic fail. Because you got guys like LaDanian Tomlinson, okay, talking about he is of mixed race. And, I'm going to break this down in this video about the speech. I'm not going to play the speech at all, obviously due to copyright reasons. But I'm just going to break it down. You haven't seen the speech, I'll have the link in the description. It's right on the NFL's YouTube page. But it's basically a confirmation or a continuance of what I've been talking about for about a year, a little over a year, in terms of black people, okay? People classified as African American. We suffer from mental disorders, cognitive dissonance, PTSD, post-traumatic slavery disorder, and Stockholm syndrome. And I've talked about this many a times before. If you don't know who you are, meaning you don't know your history, your ancestry, where you came from, and your ancestry comes from one place, that's Africa, including Native Americans, which I'm going to talk about also, because he had a complete misnomer talking about if you are from America, except Native Americans, you come from somewhere else, right? That's a complete misnomer. The guy is completely miseducated regarding that, as well as the majority of NFL players, with the acceptance of a guy like Colin Kaepernick, right? But LaDanian Tomlinson, this guy inherited a slave owner family's name, okay? My name, Smith, my last name, is a slave owner's name, okay? On my dad's side, my great-great-grandfather is white, okay? So I know my history in terms of that, but I know that in terms of scientific facts and where my roots come from, they come from Africa. They come specifically from the nation of Liberia. Okay, I did a DNA trace back in 2014. That's where it comes from. So I know and understand my history, and I know and understand my roots, right? And that's when I, became woke around that time, 2013, 2014. That's when I became really conscious. That moment of clarity where you're just socially conscious, politically conscious, historically conscious, et cetera, et cetera. That's when I have that opium level of just going in on information and being a sponge and trying to learn as much as I possibly could about my history, right? And that's when I was just basically learning and taking things as I could take them. But this speech here, man, this just completely confirms the mental disorders that we have, epigenetics that we continue to have, that we deal with, in terms of environmental factors that change the psyche of our thought process, our psychological behaviors, and the way that we input information because of environmental factors, which is epigenetics that I've always talked about, right? Which consist of, right, impoverished conditions, drug-infested areas, crime-infested areas. And the flip side of that, you can also live in an affluent community and still be influenced by your surroundings in a negative way, right? LaDanian Tomlinson, right, like I said, he says that he is of mixed race and he represents America, right? And so here's the thing, family. The word coon, that is really, and I'm gonna keep it real. The word coon is overused quite often, right? But I think also the fact that people don't really understand the true definition and where it comes from. They don't understand the word coon, right? So LaDanian Tomlinson, and there are many people like LaDanian Tomlinson in the NFL. Okay. Like I said, with the NFL boycott thing, it will not, it's going to be an epic fail. It's not going to work without, again, like I said in my last video, the most effective way to boycott the NFL, it's going to have to work with the players being involved. They're going to have to stop playing and stop receiving money. That's not going to happen. It's not. Okay. And we also need to do a consumer boycott with every affiliated sponsor in the NFL. That includes ESPN, Fox, all apparel companies, okay, Anheuser-Busch, cable companies, Microsoft, everything. We have to stop buying products from those companies. And I highly doubt that's going to happen as well. Because, again, we depend on whose resources so much? The dominant white society's resources. It's unfortunate, family. I'm just keeping it real. We depend on their resources too much. We simply can't stop consuming the products they make. It's just, we're in too deep with white supremacy. Since 1505, the inception of the transatlantic slave trade. We're in too deep. But going back to the Coon meaning, right? See, like I said, people don't really understand the true definition of Coon and what it means, where it comes from. I reference this site quite often. This is the Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia, which is Ferris State University. Okay. And in this article, they break it down where the word Coon comes from, et cetera, et cetera. And they also have primary references with, as you can see here, where they get it from. This is not just something made up out of thin air. Okay, they have references to prove where they got this information from. So you guys need to check this out. But I'm going to briefly read to you what Coon means, right? Because, like I said, guys like LaDanian Tomlinson and the NFL players, they fall in this category, but it's albeit beyond that right now. It's just the fact that we all have mental disorders that we just cannot get away from, because these guys don't know they have them. They don't know they have, Stockholm syndrome, cognitive dissonance, PTSD, post-traumatic slave disorder. They don't know they have that. But briefly, the Coon definition, which is the Coon caricature, this comes from the Coon caricature is one of the most insulting of all anti-black caricatures. The name itself, an abbreviation of raccoon, is dehumanizing as the Sambo. The Coon was portrayed as lazy, easily frightened, chronically idle, inarticulate buffoon. The Coon differed from the Sambo in subtle but important ways. All right, so think about it. So the Coon was portrayed as lazy, easily frightened, chronically idle, inarticulate buffoon. Okay. What I said about Jadakiss in one of my other videos, right? I had some comments from, I don't know who it was from, but this guy was like, and he said it actually kind of respectfully as well. He was basically saying he disagreed with me saying that Jadakiss was a coon. He basically said that, Michael Vick and Ray Lewis were cooning. Jadakiss was basically saying a fact. And of course, I disagree with that, and I still do disagree with that because this is actual proof right here. I'm reading you the textbook definition of cooning. Okay? Once again, as with the Sambo, the Coon was portrayed as lazy, easily frightened, chronically idle, inarticulate buffoon. Jadakiss displayed the condition of someone that is chronically idle and lazy, meaning that when he said that Jadakiss said that Colin Kaepernick should have thought about the repercussions, right, for his protests and raising awareness and activism, And like I said, he undermined the intelligence of Colin Kaepernick. Of course he did that because he studied the guys like Martin Luther King who did the same thing. Malcolm X who did the same thing. He knows and studied those guys. Muhammad Ali. He wears T-shirts of those guys. So he knows what he did would potentially not get him employed. That's the whole point, right? But to say that he should have thought about the repercussions, and he also mentioned that you got to play by the rules, that means you just are accepting the status quo of white supremacy. You don't want to change your narrative. Textbook definition of a coon. Portrayed as lazy, chronically idle, does not want to change their position. Right? That's what Jadakiss was displaying. Chronically idle in his position. You can even say bug dancing, which I said in the video. Lazy. Right? Inarticulate buffoon, not able to articulate his stance further in terms of what Colin Kaepernick was doing wrong. He just said play by the rules and worry about your repercussions. Again, upstanding the status quo of white supremacy, being happy with your position, right? And just being subservient and docile to white supremacy. That's the whole point. But again, the Coon caricature in the definition, they break it down thoroughly. Y'all need to check this site out. This is what I reference all the time. It's many other things about racist history and memorabilia, where it comes from. Check this out. All right. Check this site out. All right. I'll have it in the link in the description as well. But going back to LaDanian Tomlinson, right? Again, like I said, he inherited a slave owner's last name, Tomlinson. Okay. Now this stems from I'll take that back. There's a guy in his family who's obviously white. His name is Chris Tomlinson. This is the guy whose family, his forefathers, were the slave owners. And he wrote a book about it and mentioned also that he's related to LaDanian Tomlinson, which they also come from the same place in Texas. I'm going to play this clip so you guys can get a better understanding of why LaDanian Tomlinson said he's of mixed race and he represents America. I'll play this clip and I'll come back with my commentary. Here you go.
And again, one of the things that your grandfather bragged about was that a bunch of African American slaves kept the name. It's something that's fairly common that happened to a lot of slaves. They kept the names that that was forced upon them, I suppose. So I guess the line that came down, this other family of Tomlinsons, that they're Black Tomlinsons, has a really kind of storied past here. So tell us about that family line.
Well, I first learned about the Black Tomlinsons and where I could find them from my father, who was a big college football fan, and I was talking to him from overseas, and he said that there was this amazing running back who was playing for Texas Christian University, and his name was LaDanian Tomlinson. He was black, and he was from Falls County, Texas, and that could only mean one thing, that he was descendant of the slaves my family held. So he was my first lead on tracking down the Black Tomlinsons. I met his mother first, and his aunts and uncles and siblings who still live in Falls County, and began this amazing journey of learning about this side of my family that I had no idea existed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so he already just said, right, he wanted to track down the descendants, right, of the slave owners, the slaves that he kept in his family. He wanted to track those down that kept the last name of Tomlinson from his family, and he wrote a book about it. All right, which is fine. Okay, he wrote a book about it, connected with LaDanian Tomlinson. Talked about, what a great football player he is, which, of course, LaDanian is a great running back, not taking that away from him whatsoever. Was a beast on the field, was definitely a beast. Now, here's the thing, right? This is where I talk about mental illnesses of what black people suffer from. We are the only group of people, right, not only to accept and take in a slave owner's last name, right, but we're taught also to forgive, pray, and wait on Jesus. We're the only group of people to do that, right? To forgive, pray, and wait on Jesus. Forget about the slavery you endure for 500 plus years since 1505, since the inception of the transatlantic slave trade. Forget about the damn inception of slave catchers since 1789, the Judiciary Act of 1789. Forget about all that and the atrocities of white supremacy that's been running rampant in this country, right? Forget about all that. Forget about, all of that stuff. You don't need no reparations. I need you to forgive, pray, accept your last name, and claim that you were a mixed race and you represent America. Just accept it, pray, and forgive, and wait on Jesus. That's the narrative we were taught, right? The very same people who enslaved us taught us that religion, Christianity, which I talked about before, all right? Which is just a variation. It's an Abrahamic religion, okay? And it's not monotheism, it's not polytheism, it's henotheism, right? But we were taught that. Our slave masters taught us that religion. We were socially engineered and conditioned to think that way. And again, we suffer from these mental disorders that, because of our surroundings, epigenetics, that's the way we are displayed as you can see from LaDanian Tomlinson Hall of Fame speech. We say, I am of mixed race, and LaDanian, you blacker than a motherfucker. Just to keep it real. You black than a motherfucker. And you talk about you mixed race. Just because you inherited your slave owner's last name, just like myself, Smith. Okay? But I know where my ancestry comes from. It comes from West Africa, Liberia. All right? It ain't because, and here's the other thing, right? Now, a lot of people who learn their history and learn where their last name comes from, which is, more than likely comes from a white supremacist last name, slave owner's last name. You get the guys that change their name to some, whatever random name they want to. Maybe it's an African name or some nation in Africa. Whatever. You are Moor, a 5%er, nation of gods on earth, whatever the case may be, a Hebrew Israelite, whatever. You change your name, right? That's cool, right? You can change your name all you want, but as long as you actually know who you are, know your ancestry, where you come from, right? As long as you stay connected with that, you are good. So if you keep your slave master's last name and you are disconnected with your history, that's a problem. If you are connected with your history and where your ancestry comes from, then you on point. All right? You on point. And unfortunately, LaDanian is disconnected. He thinks he's mixed race. And like I said, LaDanian, you black than a motherfucker. Straight up. Okay? But like I said, we were taught, socially engineered, and conditioned because of epigenetics and our surroundings to think this way, to be docile, to be submissive, right? to pray, to forgive, and wait on Jesus, and just accept. And just like Jadick has said, play by the rules. We got to play by the rules for 500 years, right? And then some. We got to continue to just wait on Jesus and pray about it and forgive, right? That's what we're taught. And so this is a very, very, very long battle that we have to endure. Like I said, I call myself the black separatist. The only way that we are going to replace this broken system of injustice and replace it with a system of justice is to completely separate from those very same people who oppress us, and separate from those our own people who make us look bad, the Coons, the Sambos, the sellouts, etc., etc. Right? That's the only way. So, again, family, this NFL boycott stuff, guys like LaDanian Tomlinson, and there's a plethora of other players who think exactly like him in the NFL, with the exception of guys like Colin Kaepernick and people who support Colin Kaepernick in the NFL. If just those players who support Colin Kaepernick boycott, I'd say that's at least a start, because you cannot have an effective boycott without players being involved, and also coupled with the fact that you are boycotting every NFL sponsor. And also the sponsors have to play a part of that as well. But that's an extreme long shot. But the thought process of LaDanian Tomlinson and many NFL players like him, who are just socially engineered to be defeated and be docile and submissive to white supremacy and just accept it and say they're a mixed race and they represent America, and not understanding that Native Americans in this country come from Africa, studied the Folsom people, just like Dr. Clown Anderson say. Y'all better read Powernomics and Black Labor, White Wealth. Read those books. I would send that to LaDanian Tomlinson if I could. You need to read up on your history, brother, because you're damn lost. Just like the rest of these NFL players, lost and defeated of white supremacy. All right. So those are my thoughts on that, family. Leave your comments down below in the comment section about LaDanian Tomlinson's speech. And let me know what you guys think down below. Also, if you haven't already, please sign up to blackspot.com. It is the black version of Facebook, the black version of Instagram. In order for that site to get better, we got to support it. It's as little as $5 a month. Make sure you sign up. Add me as a friend. I'll add you back. Once again, my name is Chauncey, a.k.a. the Black Separatist. Signing out. Peace.